Most women, they don't fear rejection because they're fragile little wallflowers. They fear it because by the time it happens, they've often overinvested more than was earned. And that's when it stings so much.
The rejection isn't about you. It's about how you time the investment you're making.
Hey, and welcome to Dating Dames V2. I'm Jackie, and this is my lovely co host, Michelle. Whether you're single, newly divorced, or simply waking up to that possibility of love once again, you're in the right place because here at Dating Dames, we believe it's not about him, it's about you. And today we're talking about rejection, how it derails so many confident women. And we've been there too, what we've learned. But today we're going to think about it differently. And this is what you'll be taking away.
Yeah, so we want to cover a few things for people. First of all, why rejection after divorce or a long relationship feels more intense, and how early emotional attachment actually makes that worse. Also, how to date with pacing instead of overcommitting too early. And maybe how to reframe rejection as discernment, not a reflection. Absolutely not a reflection of your worth. The difference also between marriage mindset and dating mindset, which in our thinking are completely different things.
Absolutely. So let's set the context a little bit. Because most women, they don't fear rejection because they're fragile little wallflowers. They fear it because by the time it happens, they've often overinvested more than was earned. And that's when it stings so much. Or when you've experienced rejection and it reawakes feelings and memories of the past marriage where you gave deeply, you gave everything of yourself, and you still got left. And especially for women in our 40s, 50s, and beyond, who've been in long commitments or long marriages, we know how to commit very well. We show up consistently. We're emotionally available. We are adjusting our schedules for somebody else. And we're happy to build something together. But those skills, they build marriages and they don't apply to dating because marriage is not dating. And so when you bring marriage level skills to a dating scenario, rejection doesn't just feel like feedback, it feels like a loss, a personal loss. So today we're talking about how we can reframe rejection for you.
Yeah, so our first reframe is really thinking of that and realizing that rejection isn't about you. It's about how you time the investment you're making. So the truth that a lot of people, most women miss, maybe men too, I don't know, but rejection hurts more when you've already bonded to this person. And it's not because you're weak, but it's because your nervous system thinks, oh, we're a pair, I'm committed, and something meaningful has now been taken away from me. I've been rejected. And here's a simple example. Maybe you've only been on 3 dates, but you've already told them the entire divorce story in excruciating detail. You've been texting daily, morning, noon, and night. Maybe you've even mentally thought about some weekends away. You've started to adjust your schedule. Oh, I won't go to that spin class. I can do the yoga later. And so when he pulls back or cancels or suddenly says he's not ready for this level of intensity, it doesn't feel like just kind of information like we're not aligned. It feels like they have personally rejected you because you have now given so much. So the reframe is that wasn't rejection. They barely even know you. They don't know you at all. I mean, you've had
You're
3
strangers.
dates and you don't know them. But that was your system attaching. We're quite good at this before a real container and real knowledge was built. So dating requires time and earned access, not kind of your emotions on speed and creating and building stories in your mind, already imagining the wedding and asking if he's the one on date 2.
Absolutely. So Michelle spoke about, timing of investments. And then there's rejection when you start sharing a standard or a boundary. And this is not your fault. And this one matters particularly for women who have stayed too long in the past. You don't share your standards because you simply want things to flow smoothly and easily. And you're so scared that if you do, things are going to change. And so you compromise and you allow things to flow, do things that you may not necessarily want to do. But these are the ingredients of marriage. They're not the ingredients of a dating scenario. And many women women at this case interpret rejection as I wasn't chosen. But often that's really not what's happening. You're just at the edge of alignment. And I think of a great story for myself whereby I had been texting somebody for about a week and a half or two. We finally went out on a date, and I have a policy about not sleeping with men on first dates. And after a lovely dinner, great conversation, loads of fun, he invited me back to his place, and I said no. And that was the end of it. Never saw him again. And we speak about boundaries, we speak about putting down boundaries, but the implementation thereof is so much harder. And in this case, you enjoyed each other. But as soon as you started expressing a boundary, he pulled back, he disengaged. And that felt like rejection. But really, it wasn't. It's just your standards started carrying a lot more weight. And frankly, this is a good thing because at least at this point, you know that you can start sift out those who are aligned with you, those who share the same values as you and the same boundaries as you, and those who don't. So anything that can't meet your needs simply just falls away early, and better for it to happen early than at a later stage in the
And
relationship.
actually, in my thinking, even with your example, Jackie, I think,
Yeah.
if your standard was, I'm not going to sleep with someone on the first date, and he either pressured or cajoled or whatever had to happen there, and you eventually said no. If he then pulls away, actually, that was, you rejected first. I mean, not so
Yeah.
specifically about the intimacy, but about the fact that you said, this is my standard. So my rejection of, what you're asking, and by extension, who he is in that situation, is like, no, that's my boundary. And so actually you rejected first. And to take that or to compromise your values, I think it's that slippery slope. And I know just from, my marriage, I think I compromised a lot of things that I didn't even realize. And if you start in the dating scenario of compromising so early, it's not going to lead you to the place that you really want to end up. Certainly if it's a different type of place than you were before. So
Absolutely.
those standards, those boundaries are critical.
Yes, absolutely. We've both learned that, which is great.
And the other thing, kind of the third sort of way of reframing this is think about rejection as a skill builder. So even if you do feel at some level that you were rejected, this is not a verdict about who you are. They don't even know you. You've met a few times, and maybe you even dated for a month. Again, how much do they know you? Not much. They don't know who you are. And this is where dating needs new rules. You are not there to stay the course, work it through, commit harder. In dating, the skill is for you to observe how you feel, how they're reacting, to figure out how you want to respond, and to decide whether this has legs to go a little further. It's not about jump in quickly, commit, and then imagine, kind of this future together when you've only been, in a very short time. So, kind of one of the things that there are a few things that you might want to note is whether the effort is consistent, whether this person is sometimes hot, sometimes cold, texting all day, texting never for days, or the curiosity. In my case, I had a situation where the curiosity about me was very one-sided in that there was none. I was asking him
Yes,
all the
very fun from
questions.
what I recall.
And I walked away
Your
from that
questions
date
are personal.
going, did he ask anything about me? Am I overthinking this? But then he said, let's have another date. And I said, okay. We had another date, and the same thing happened again. And yet he seemed interested. So I kind of went with it. And I went for the third date. And that's when I realized that no, this was
You went for
not.
the third date, Michelle.
I did go for the third date. Sometimes it takes three. I do give extra
Take three.
chances.
We're learning. We're learning.
We are learning. So, the old pattern is maybe you justify all of
Yes,
that. But
absolutely.
in the
Yes.
new one, you look at the information and then you decide. And when it ends, you say, hey, I've learned, if they rejected you, maybe that was easier. In some ways, it's kind of easier if they say, no, I don't want to go further. And it didn't take anything from you. You haven't invested. You haven't overinvested. That is not a loss.
Correct. And I think it's very important for us to remember, we were discussing this prior to the recording, which is these are strangers in our life. If we've been seeing them for 3 dates only, they're strangers. We don't know them well. What we've often done is create and added little gaps in our mind of who they are, but they're absolute strangers. So that takes me to what is the core teaching for us today? And the shift is quite clear. Dating is not about proving that you can commit. So as we wrap up this session, the key thing to remember is that rejection is not the enemy. It's simply that little voice on your shoulder that is sharing information with you. And when you stop dating from that marriage skill set as opposed to the dating from self-trust, dating from discernment, and dating from discovery and adventure, rejection stops feeling earth shattering and it starts feeling more like information. And I wish to reinforce this. It is part of that natural dating filtering system, where it is naturally decided who should enter your life and who should not.
And, we talk a lot about adventure and the excitement. And if you think about it, if you go on a trip, there are going to be moments that are not going to be brilliant. But it doesn't mean the entire trip is not worthy of the journey.
Yeah.
It means, okay, you have to buy the ticket again, or you have to go to a different restaurant. But it doesn't mean that the entire thing is unworthy or you should be questioning, your worthiness of being on this trip to begin with.
Yeah.
So maybe a hint, something for people to think about is maybe there's a method where for the next 2 weeks, you only invest emotionally at the same level and initiative that you are receiving. We call this sort of matching energy, right? And it doesn't mean you're withholding. It means that if he makes a plan, you show up. Maybe you then make the next plan. If he confirms, you respond. You are matching at the same level. It doesn't have to be within 30 seconds or whatever it is. But if he goes quiet, you do not jump in, fill the void, try to figure out what's happening. You just kind of let it unfold more naturally, and where you're in a place of not feeling like either the victim or the martyr or overcompensating. And when you do this, it's going to retrain your nervous system to attach to someone based on their actual behavior, not some hope or fantasy of what it could be or what you've built it up to be in your mind. And if you're unsure, if even that feels big, then you should, start with the basics. Say no to something that's draining you, say yes to something that you're excited about, and say thank you. Say thank you to yourself for how far you've come, what you've learned, and the journey that you're on. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And I think we as women need to thank ourselves a lot more. We pour into everybody all the time and we don't actually just take a moment to say, bloody hell, Jackie. Thank you so much for the journey that you've allowed to happen. Thank you so much for growing, for expanding, for developing. And for those who this episode has resonated with, share it with a friend, share it with a family member, a loved one that needs to hear it. And come join us at Dating Dames on the socials on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And until next time, remember to trust your instincts, embrace adventure, and most importantly, remember, it's not about him, it's about you.